Is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcements and coffee break and snacks, and our main speaker. Our first speaker is Amir. Let's welcome Amir.
Thank you, Terry. I'm an alcoholic. Good evening, family. I'd like to welcome all of our new friends, chip takers, anyone that is celebrating a birthday. My sobriety date is 11/7/2014. A few more weeks, I might be 11 years sober. And I got here when I was 40 years old. And up to that, I didn't think I was an alcoholic. But I should have known that when I was maybe 10 years old. And I was born in a country called Iran, or considered Persian, where alcohol is illegal, and that's where I had my first alcohol drink. And that should tell you right away that you are one of us, right? Moved to Germany when I was like 11 years old. There was a lot of chaos and war and everything, and Germany is open for drinking, and I was the only kid that among all my German friends, I were all blonde and blue eyes, had some facial hair, so I was able to go to the market and get some beer, and we would get in the back of that train and just go up and down the city and drink, and drinking age is 16 over there, so it's pretty easy, and moved here to the U.S. when I was like 15 and a half, 16 years old, and I got connected immediately with people that were just like me, that wanted to get drunk, didn't want to go to school, and they just wanted to go out there and spend time in the park drinking instead of doing the good stuff. And I started smoking, I started drinking, and then, drugs are a part of my story. At 18, I found something that would allow me to drink for 3 days without getting a blackout or, anything. And that became my best friend for many years. And and I thought, that's it. I am going to do this for the rest of my life. And I was crazy. I used to smuggle it with me everywhere. I actually went to Colombia and took an 8-ball with me to Colombia. And because I didn't want to wait for the dealer to show up, even that it was part of the plan. But, just waiting is too much, when you want that. A lot of things happened during this time. I had 3 DUIs. You would think that would be a bottom. No, nothing. What happened is on a Sunday, I have a son who is 21 years old, who is on his 4th year of university, and another son that is now just started going to university in Colorado, in Boulder. And the older son was 10 years old, and he walked in that room on a Sunday around, I would say, 1:30 in the afternoon. And this is the time that the door wasn't locked. Usually my wife would keep the door locked so the kids stay away from me because she knew what I was doing. And he walked in there, and he looked at me and he's like, "Dad, let's go play basketball." And I was just looking at him, and he got terrified. I don't think he recognized my face. He turned around, ran out of the room, slammed the door, just like any kid does. When we get scared, we run. And that was it for me. That was my bottom, That was hard. That was the hardest thing I had to ever experience in my life. And he's 21 years old right now. He's my best friend. We travel. We do things together. He's just like, I spend the whole day with him today. And he's taller than me. And he doesn't remember me drunk. That's crazy, right? And he was 10 years old. But we kept the door locked. We kept the door very well locked until that one incident. So something happened. I had this spiritual awakening, that we hear, or whatever you want to call it. I saw either I'm going to kill myself, and I already knew I sucked as a father, and my biggest fear is this kids growing up and telling people how their dad died. That was my biggest fear. So, and I turned into AA, and I kept it very simple. I did what I didn't want to do, like reading, English is my 3rd language, so, it's a little bit challenging, to go back and read again, and but I did it, I was willing to go any lengths, you know. So, you know, there was no God in my life. You know, I come from a country and look, they use God to kill people. Like, how is that possible? How this, how that? So that God that I carried, I got rid of that God really quick when I got here. You know, that punishing, mean, you know, God. And for me, that was one of the easiest things. You know, for some of us, it might be a little bit challenging. But, you know, my unmanageability and my powerlessness was there. 5 minutes? Thank you. And then the step 2 and 3, you know, I got right into it. And what it is like right now, I believe in, you know, helping others, being of service. When you want to say no, say yes, you know, because I said so many yeses when I should have said no when I was out there, right? And, you know, and that's what got me here, you know. And, you know, I'm the kind of alcoholic that would invite his whole family over on a Sunday, and then I get a phone call at 11 o'clock in the morning, "We are at your house, where are you?" And I'm on somebody else's house getting high. And a person that didn't care about family, didn't want to go to the hospital, didn't want to deal with anything that has to do with death or, you know, sickness or anything. And, you know, this last 2.5 years, I buried my dad last December. You know, he passed away. But the last 2.5 years, he had the toughest life. You know, no kidneys, everything just failing. ICU, rehab, hospital, just a thing. And I am so grateful that I was able to be sober, that I got to do that. I got to experience that with my father. I got to hold his hand when he took his last breath and he closed his eyes, you know, because I would have missed out on all that, you know. And life is great, you know, but it has a lot of ups and downs. Like this past week, I had some really, really hard time. Some business transactions that didn't go my way. I wanted to take my will back. Why is it like this? This is not supposed to be like this. When am I going to get mine? And you know what? That I go to one place. Where is my higher power in all this? I question myself that, you know. And then I'm like, it's all money. Like if, God forbid, my son would get sick, I am willing to go and become homeless and sell everything to make sure my son thing, you know. So it's like, it's just where my head goes. But this program has taught me how to get back to it and get centered, you know. And it's been a great journey, you know. You know, watching my kids grow, you know, traveling with them, going to his college. I'm watching everybody getting drunk on a family weekend. I'm the only sober one in the section holding a bottle. And, you know, I can manage to go halfway through that bottle. This is a guy that used to go through like 5 cans of beer and maybe 3 more drinks during the break. And it's just so amazing, you know. And, you know, I see my son right now. He's living that life. But you know what? I know I'm powerless over what he does. I can only be his best friend. I can only be his guidance. And, you know, and I'm sure he's going to get through that college and then he's going to get the thing. But, you know, I just, I don't sit there because I came from a very strict family, you know. My mom never drank. My dad, I think my dad is the only time I've seen him buzz was at my wedding. And that's because the whole ultimate goal was to get everyone fucked up. So that way they don't see what I'm doing in the middle of the dance floor. You know, like people coming with a CD cover or like throwing pills in my mouth while I'm dancing in my own wedding, you know. And it's crazy. Like, you know, we sent this film to Iran and they're like, it's the best film we have ever seen. I'm like, only if you knew what is going on in every corner in our wedding outside, you know. It was like, but hey, I'm here right now. I'm alive. You know, I get to live another day in this, you know, another day and be with you guys. So I think my time is up, right? Just get to it, keep it simple. This is what I did, you know, be willing, be open-minded, you know, and this is where I found my family, and I hope you will find it too. You know, I thought I had family out there, but the minute I got sober, none of them were around anymore because they were just my drunk family, you know. I found my families in this room. I came in this room as a kid. I was as mature as a 16-year-old kid maybe at the age of 40, and you guys took this little boy and turned him into a man. And I hope you get exactly what I got here. Thank you.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now our main speaker will share his or her experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Katya from Santa Monica.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katya. I'm an alcoholic. Are you still getting treats over there? So thank you so much for asking me to come and letting me bring my friends, Amir and Perry. Tonight is Persian night, so if you didn't know, now you know. I'll get into my story, but my father's Persian. I was raised in a Persian home. No, half a Persian home, but with Persian family. And when I got sober, I became estranged from that family. But I always wanted brothers, and so I just find them and I make them. And Amir is one of my brothers, and he's like family for me. And he's one of those people that I know if I called him in the middle of the night and said, Amir, I need you, he would be there. And if you don't have an Amir in your life or a few Amirs, go get you some. I've never called him in the middle of the night and asked him to do that, but it's just comforting to know that he's there and he feels like family. So thank you. And I spoke at a women's prison the night before my AA birthday, and I am amazed that I was never in prison. I'll tell you my story. So I was born in Denmark. My mother's Danish, my father's Persian. I have this funny name, We left Denmark when I was 11 months old. We went to Chicago. I was in Chicago for a few years. And my dad said, the weather sucks and let's go to California. And nobody was here. There were no Persians here that I knew of. Nobody was here. And we were in Los Feliz. And at the time, Los Feliz was like the melting pot. And I remember like my best friend was, I think she was Korean. And in the morning, my mom would drop me off at this Latin lady's house because she went to school. I just remember being around everything. And no matter where I was, I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't comfortable. I didn't fit in. I didn't like it. I didn't like the social aspect of school. I hated lunchtime. We would put 50 cents in an envelope and we'd get a hot dog. And I would try, like, how long can I make the hot dog last, right? Like, how long? And kids they all looked like they all knew each other and they all looked like they were friends. And I was just awkward. And I remember I used to get a Tupperware container, a margarine container. I poked holes in it. And there was this huge bush that had all these ladybugs. And I'd pick ladybugs. And then I'd let them go at the end of the day. Like, I was just sad. And I'm an only child. And I would ask my mom for a brother. I wanted an older brother. And she tried to explain why she couldn't make me one. And I'm like, I want an older brother. And she's like, well, we could make you a younger one. And I was like, no, I don't want the baby and the poop and I want an older one. And when I was in first grade, between first and second grade, my dad ran into this man that he was related to from Iran, and he was married and they had 3 kids. And so it was Martin and Sarah, and they had a girl that was 4 years older than me, a boy that was 3 years older than me, and a baby that was born when I was 7. And they lived 10 minutes from us. And all of a sudden, we were one family. We did everything with this family, and I felt like my skin fit for the first time. The kids all had funny names like mine. They could pronounce my name correctly. All our parents had accents. They all spoke foreign languages. We all ate the same weird food. Like, it was excellent. And I was like, I got my older brother, I got my older sister. We'll deal with the baby. We'll torture the baby. But I got them. And I don't. The coolest thing about having them is I hear horrible stories about brothers and sisters and how they like torture each other. For some reason, they didn't. Let's just, for the sake of argument, call them brother and sister. My brother and sister treated me great. They treated me great, and I was happy. So during the week when I didn't see them, I would just deal with school, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was with them, and we'd have sleepovers, and it was just great. And however, in that house, there was a ton of violence. The parents beat the crap out of the kids. And bad. And when I got into second grade, I was different. I was totally different. I was outgoing, I was loud, I was fun, I was funny, I was holding court. Everybody wanted to sit at my table. I was different. I hadn't had drugs or alcohol yet, and I already had what we call a spiritual experience. I was different, and I wanted what you had, and I remember this girl had something in her lunchbox. I told her to give it to me, and she didn't, so I took it, and then she told on me. And our school was like this, where there were windows there, but no windows there. And I took her on the side of the building, and I flipped her. My dad had me in judo. I was a tomboy. And so I flipped her. If you don't know anything about judo, it's like a lot of flipping. And so I flipped her, and I knocked the wind out of her. And I remember seeing the fear in her eyes. And I remember thinking, you won't do that again, and tell everybody. And I started just enjoying people being afraid of me. I liked it a lot. And I was a big kid. I was bigger than most kids. And then I also had a big mouth. So big mouth, big kid, intimidating. And so this started my bully career. And then when I was 10, I was at that house, and my sister said, we're gonna drink tonight. I didn't care what she said we were going to do. If she said we're going to pick our butts, I would have said, great. She was 4 years older than me. You do whatever a girl that's 4 years older than me says, They're cool. Just whatever they do, they're cool. And so we had scotch and water that night, and it was It was disgusting. And like we had soda, we had Kool-Aid. I don't know why we didn't mix it. I have no idea. But we drank, and we drank. Like, it wasn't just a little bit. Like, I remember there were tall brown glasses, and we drank, and it was the first night that I got drunk, and I remember the room spinning. I remember it was the first time my face was on a toilet seat, and I liked it, and I was puking all night, and I don't remember. I hear other people from the podium go, oh, and I took a drink, and I felt, I don't remember any of that. I remember spinning and puking, and the next day I said to her, when can we do that again? There's alcoholism in my family. Maybe I was born alcoholic. I have no idea. To this day, I could care less, right? Chicken, egg, who came first? But I know I liked it. And it started my chase into ingesting something that was going to make me feel different. And so that's elementary school. I get into junior high. I would have, there's no way you could have caught me drinking alcohol around adults. I did not want to get in trouble. My dad was scary as hell. I didn't so much care about teachers, but my dad scared me. So I didn't have any alcohol when in junior high. So I had to find other things. And I found speed. And it wasn't the speed that you all are doing today, where you pick your skin to the bone for 3 months. These were ladylike speed. It was called amphetamines, and I was chubby. I didn't like being chubby, and so they were prescription diet pills, and it made me not want to eat. And I was like, this is brilliant. And your eyes weren't red, your breath didn't smell, you didn't act stupid. I thought, this is fucking miracle. And so I had a dealer in junior high. She went there, and I was, one day I start with 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then I don't know however many I'm taking. And one day I'm on the couch and I go to sit. I was laying down on the couch with my parents, and I go to sit up and I can't sit up. It's like an elephant is on my chest. And I'm like, Dad, I can't breathe. I can't get up. And they rush me to the hospital, and they're doing all these tests, and they're talking about I might have a heart murmur. I might have water on my lungs. I might have this. I might have that. Emergency. And I pulled the nurse aside, and I said, so I've been doing these little white pills. Could it be that? And I remember she goes, you little bitch. And I was like, And I was a fighter by this time. Like, I have a reputation. And I'm like, ma'am, and she goes, yes, that's what it is. Stop doing it. And for some reason, I don't know about the laws, but they couldn't tell my dad. So they end up telling my dad, she's fine, there's nothing wrong. And my dad's like, all American doctors, all they're trying to do is take your money, this son of a bitch. And so we never saw that doctor again. And, and my experience with drugs is they would turn on me. I could see them turn on me, and I would stop. I don't think I ever did speed again. I tried pot for a minute, made me want to eat the fridge. I already told you. I was trying not to be big. And I get into high school, and my experience with alcoholism is that you turn your red flag green. And my red flag was, I will never drink around adults. Never. And one day it just makes sense. That's alcoholism. I didn't know that, obviously, at the time. I've since learned that once I came to AA, but I started putting vodka in a Diet Coke can. And I also think on the 20 questions, they should say, if you think vodka doesn't smell, you might be an alcoholic. You only hear an alcoholic say that. Well, I didn't think it smelled. Okay. And so I was putting vodka in a Diet Coke can, and I was taking it with me to school, and it just made school that much easier. I hated school. I hated school so much. And I was fighting a lot. And my fights are getting worse. My drinking's getting worse. When I drink, I black out. When I drink, I puke, or both. To me, throwing up was like a start over, like, great, now I can drink more. And, I'm drinking whenever I can. My parents would go out for the weekend. They would go to Palm Springs. One day I should ask them, what were you thinking? Like, I was a bad kid. I was always in the dean's office. I was always getting suspended. I was always in trouble. I was always hanging around with the kids my parents didn't want me to hang out with, and yet they would leave me with a house and money and cars and go to Palm Springs, and they'd say, be good. Okay, and those weekends, I drank more than I could have in a month, and they would come home, and I'd be wrecked, and I don't know how they didn't see that. I was wrecked. I didn't sleep a week. It was just drank the whole weekend. And, I did a little bit of cocaine. It was very expensive. And when I was 17, I was graduating high school. And, by this time I'm carrying a knife in my switchblade in my sleeve because because the girls are looking for me. That I had beat up really bad, and my dad gave me a switchblade. He's like, be careful, she's gonna come back and look for you. And so I was like, okay, and so I used to carry it like in my sleeve. And I had a tire iron in this part of the car, where you like probably have tissues or whatever you have there. I had a tire iron there because I was having altercations while driving. My current boyfriend was in jail for robbing houses. I mean, like, it was bad. And I never thought drugs or alcohol was an issue, but I knew that I wasn't living right. And so when I was 17, I was barely graduating high school, I said to myself, I'm going to go become a lady. I know what ladies look like. They're all in my family, a lot of ladies. I wasn't raised by wolves. I was raised by classy people. I'm going to go become a lady. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to get good grades. I'm going to find a nice Jewish boy. My dad's Jewish, and so I'm going to go find a nice Jewish boy, get married, and we'll have one, maybe two kids. He'll provide. There you go. It was not a crazy idea from where I was coming from. What I didn't know is I burned down my own life. I didn't know that the problem is I'm in that idea, And from 17 to 19, I went to 4 different junior colleges. I got no grades. I tried to start a gang. I lost my gang when it came time to go tag. None of my friends would go out with me because I would walk out the door and get in a fight. I had been fired I was working at Judy's. It was a clothing store. And they were going to promote me to cashier, but I didn't pass the lie detector test. And I remember being so incensed, like, how dare they? And I was dealing cocaine in their dressing room and stealing clothes. Yet I was surprised that I didn't pass the lie detector test and that they fired me. And I was living in an apartment that was paid for by this old creepy guy that lived in Boston. I had no electricity. No offense. Perry's from Boston. I had no electricity. I didn't care that I didn't have electricity. I'd had a horrible bout with cocaine. Horrible. I was fully addicted. I had quit on my own. So I'm not doing cocaine, but I'm drinking every day. And in the moment, and I never once remembered that plan that I had. Oh, and my current boyfriend was not a nice Jewish boy, and he was beating the crap out of me. And I would have defended him to the death. I would have defended him to the death. And it's wild how I lie to myself. It's wild. And so through a series of events, it's like, how did you end up getting sober? Through a weird series of events, right? And I convinced my gang to come over, and I wanted to go dancing. Going to clubs was really popular back then. And so I wanted to go dancing, and I said, come over. I'll light candles because I don't have electricity. I won't drink. I won't fight. I'll wear white. Girls that fight don't wear white. I'll wear my hair down. Girls that fight, usually we braid it back. And I'll wear long earrings. And that's everything a fighting girl doesn't do. And so they came over. I had champagne because to me, champagne is like bubble water. It's not drinking. I like brown liquor by itself in the bottle. And I chase it with some Diet Coke. I don't want ice. Ice makes me angry, takes up too much space. So to me, like, champagne is like a joke, right? It's a joke. So they come over, we're drinking champagne, one girl's not. And I think that's weird. And then we go to this liquor store. I'm 19. We go to this liquor store. Like Amir, I had one place that would serve me. And so we go in, and I'm walking around thinking, what does someone who doesn't drink? And so I got wine coolers. And in my life, I would never get wine coolers. And so I get wine coolers, and we're drinking outside the car before we get to the club, and Crystal's not drinking. And I said, why are you not drinking? And she said, I'm sober. She had about 90 days, I think, at the time. And I said, oh, my God, good for you. I remember last time I saw you at a party, you were a total lush. You were so embarrassing. I'm so happy for you. We're quick to see it in others, right? And not in ourselves. And she just smiled. And we went to the club, and I got in a fight with the girl that stamps your hand or takes your money or something. And I was waiting for her to get off work, and I saw her getting off work, and I'm like a pit bull with a squirrel, I'm like squirrel. And I said to Crystal, come on, we got to go kill her. And Crystal was, she was 19 and only 90 days sober too. So she's like, okay. And she used to be a fighter. And so we go outside, and we're walking down Sunset. I'm yelling stupid things at this girl, and it was the first time I felt stupid. I didn't feel cool. I felt stupid. And so I said to Crystal, we'll let her live. And then I looked at Crystal, and I said, my mom's drinking bothers me. And I heard there's a program for that. And she said, yeah, it's called Al-Anon. And I said, will you take me? And she said, yes. My first Al-Anon meeting that I attended was when I was 3 years sober. So there's that. So we're supposed to go to this Al-Anon meeting. By accident, we end up in an AA meeting. And I visit AA with her for 2 months. For 2 months, I'm here. I know I don't have a drinking problem. I know I don't. Because everybody that got sober sounds like they got sober at 40 plus years old, which is, like 100 years when you're 19. And they say they drank a fifth or more a day for like 10 years, not me. And they lost everything, right? DUIs, the wife, the house, the this, the that. I had moved back at home. I had a brand new car that my dad got me. I had money in my pocket. Never went to jail, which is a shock. And so I'm like, I can't be an alcoholic. And I could control it. I thought the minute like alcohol dropped on your tongue, you're like, what's that? Don't talk from the audience. But anyways, I thought the minute it touched your tongue, like you're like, drunk. And so I'm like, I can recall times that I had a couple drinks and nothing else happened. I can remember them, so I must not be an alcoholic. And I'm not a drug addict because I quit cocaine on my own. So, but I love these meetings, and I love them for you. And in those 2 months, I'm asking Crystal all kinds of questions, like what kind of God. That I was really interested in the God part. And, I'm like, does it have to be Jesus? Because I'm a Jew. And she's like, no, but it can be. And I was like, what? And I'd never heard a religion say that. And I was like, can you eat bacon? Can you eat bacon? Because in religion, I knew nothing about the Jewish religion. I wasn't even Jewish, really. But it was more like when you say you're Italian. That's how I was Jewish. It was more cultural. But the only thing I knew about the Jewish faith was like rules. There were so many rules. Don't eat bacon. Don't do this. Don't do that. And she's like, Katya, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm like, certain religions, you can't have bacon. And she's like, no, it's whatever God you want it to be. And I thought, that's so cool for you. And, but I'm not an alcoholic. And on October 10th of 1988, I was in my house. It was in the middle of the day. I was in my parents' house. It wasn't my house. In my parents' house in the middle of the day, and I heard a voice as loud as day. And it said, you're going to use cocaine again. And that was the only thing I had ever seen where I had no control. It told me when to wake up, when to go to bed. I could see it. I never saw it with alcohol. And I was afraid. And I called Crystal, and I said, what do I have to do? And she said, you go to the meeting and you raise your hand. And you claim your disease. She didn't even tell me to say I was an alcoholic. That's why I hate small meetings when a new person is like, hi, what are you, what are you, what are you? And we force them to say something. Like, it took me more than a couple months to figure it out. And, so from the day I got sober, I knew right away. It's like everything I didn't hear in those 2 months, it was like they came flooding into my brain, right? Like, get a sponsor, work the steps, go to meetings, get commitments, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, this one who never wanted to do anything that was scholastic, I wanted to get an A in AA. And so I was about 30 days sober, and this woman comes walking into Jerry's Deli. We used to all hang out at Jerry's Deli, and Crystal and I are there, and we're trying to figure out, who's going to be the lucky person to sponsor us. And we don't want them too old. There was one lady at our meeting. We knew she knew the book, and she sponsored a bunch of people, but she told you couldn't wear short skirts. And we were all wearing mini skirts, so that wasn't going to work. And we didn't want a sponsor to tell us what to wear. And so we were trying to figure it out. Mary comes sauntering in, and Mary's 6 feet tall. She's wearing a mini skirt. She's got legs up to here. She's got big boobs. She's got a huge smile. And her nickname in AA was Party Mary, because she threw the best AA parties, and she was happy. Mary was happy. And she had 6 years sober, and she was 32 years old, not too old. And, and she came and sat at our table and gave Crystal really good boyfriend advice. And we were having boy problems, as newcomers do. And so Crystal said to Mary, will you sponsor me? And I go, me too, me too, me too, me too. Package, we're a package. And so Mary said yes. And I'm so grateful that Mary didn't say, are you willing to go to any lengths to say so for victory over alcohol? It'll come. You'll see. Either I'm willing or I'm not. And God had blessed me with willingness. Blessed me. I don't think I earned it. It's shocking to me now when I look back and go, and Mary said, get a book, get a pen, get highlighter, get notebook, blah, blah, blah. And I was at her door, ready. And we went through the book word for word, line for line. And I was so lucky. Mary had been sober for 3 years and hit a huge bottom in sobriety over a relationship. And she got a new sponsor, and that sponsor took her through the book, word for word, line for line. I used to call her Grand Poobah, our Grand Poobah. And that sponsor helped Mary have a spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening. And Mary was on fire for the big book. So even though her nickname was Party Mary, I used to call her No Joke Mary, because when we would go through the book, I used to tell her her voice changed. When it was just me and her one, because she was loud and fun and funny and like comical. But when it was me and her in that book, one-on-one, it was like God was coming through her. It was magical. And the way she made that book come alive, I loved it. She made it come alive to this, 20-year-old. And we get to chapter 3 where it says, came to believe to our innermost selves we were alcoholic. And she goes, so do you? And I was like, and I couldn't lie to Mary. By this time, I had at least 60 days sober, maybe 90 days. And what I had done in order to fit in was when you said alcohol from the podium, I said drugs. When we read the big book and it said alcohol, I read drugs. And it made sense to me if I did that. So I thought, obviously you don't drink, like sober means sober, right? So fine, but I know I'm not an alcoholic. But I'm not going to drink because I'm sober. And I thought that was good enough. And so I tried to explain that to Mary. And Mary said 2 things. She goes, there's a problem with that. She said, because one day your life's going to look really normal. And you're going to be with normal people. And you're going to see them drink alcohol normally. And you're going to say to yourself, it wasn't the alcohol. It was the drugs. And I don't even know where Chewy is, So Chewy was the dealer. And so, it's not the alcohol. She goes, so that's 1. She goes, and 2, and I said, but Mary, and I'm trying to explain and justify. And she said, Katya, alcohol and drugs are not the same. And I was like, what do you mean? And I would hear people from the podium say, oh, alcohol is just a liquid drug, and she goes, it's not the same. You give anybody morphine, give a cancer patient morphine for a period of time. Morphine's addicting. You will be addicted. Your brain is addicted. Your body's addicted. It's all addicted. She says, go to your local restaurant. If they're drinking a glass of wine, are they an alcoholic? And she threw like a wrench in my wheel because I was like, I don't know. And I said, but Mary, I could control it. I could have 2. And so we're doing this debate. And she said, I want you to go home and write on your drinking experiences only. I said, Mary, there aren't going to be any. There was always drugs. She said, I know, but I want you to go home and write on your drinking experiences only. And we kept doing this until she politely kicked me out of her house. And I went home, and she asked me when I wrote to write with a pen, not a pencil. Don't edit it. And ask God to help me see what I need to see and hear what I need to see and help me to be honest. And turn everything off, phones and TVs and whatnot. And so I did. I wrote about my drinking experiences only. And shockingly, I drank way more than I did drugs. But what I didn't know then, which I know now, is the level of delusion with alcoholism. It's not there with drug addiction. You ask any drug addict on the street, are you a drug addict? They'll say yes. I mean, as long as you're like not the police or something, they'll admit it. But you ask, and I worked on Skid Row for 2 years. You ask any alcoholic on Skid Row, are you an alcoholic? And they'll tell you no. It's my wife's fault, the cop's fault, it's everybody's fault. And it's interesting to me, the difference. And I'm so grateful to Mary for that, because in all this time, I never once thought maybe I could drink. I saw the allergy. And once I saw the allergy, it didn't matter how much I drank. It didn't matter how often I drank. It's like, God forbid, having cancer. I'm stage 1, some of you are stage 4. We're going to argue on who's got more cancer. It's freaking cancer. And I'm grateful for that, because at 20 years old, I knew I was an alcoholic. And then what started to happen was I started to hear the meetings differently. I would hear somebody that got sober at 30, a female that got sober at 30, and I would see my world had I not gotten sober, if I lived. And to this day, still, I'm like, how I didn't go to jail, how I didn't end up hurt, how, it's wild. It's wild. And so from that point on until now, it's been about learning how to live in my skin comfortably sober, how to stay excited about AA, and it hasn't always been that way. Mary helped me. I worked all my steps. I started sponsoring. I started doing all that, and then I wanted to, get a life. And I was never good in school. I was dyslexic. It was just, school was hard for me, but I'm good at work. Any job I get, they're like, let's promote her. And so whatever job, I'm good at work. And I was. It's a funny story. I was in the restaurant business for a very long time. I moved down here to Manhattan Beach. I was a restaurant manager at Houston's when I was 27 and 28. And I came to this meeting because I was such a new manager. They didn't want me on weekends because I was such a rookie. And so I came to this meeting, and I was on the food crew. And, whoever was here at that time, it was a long time ago, you were all very nice to me. And thank you for that. And because I knew nobody here, and it was weird. And it was hard. There's no like pamphlet for like, if you're sober and then you move. Like, if you plan on moving, talk to people. There's things to do, because it was hard. But I got out of the restaurant business because that was just physically too hard, and it was stupid and wasn't enough money. And and what I do is, and I don't see it, but I get a job, and they go, good job. And I go, thanks. And they go, let's give you a raise. Let's give you a business card. Let's do the, and so AA starts taking a back burner to my life. And I become the girl where I come to the meeting and people go, oh my gosh, Katya, how are you? And I get weird. Like, what are you, taking attendance? Like, oh, we haven't seen you in a while. Do you take attendance? Like, I become very defensive. And I think you're AA losers because you're living in AA. Like, there she is again. She's always at that Saturday night meeting, loser. And, I'm going to get a life. And I start getting things and money and whatever. And, the more money you make, the more money you spend. And I hit a bottom every 5 years. Every 5 years I hit a bottom. And I whether a relationship falls apart or the job falls apart, and then I run back to the middle of AA because I know what to do. I'm like the girl that gains 30 pounds, right? Like, that's how I do AA. I do it like a diet. It's like, no problem. Chicken and asparagus, gym every day. Chicken and asparagus, gym, and the minute I lose the weight, I'm eating a donut, and I forget about the chicken and asparagus. That's how I do AA. So I get back in the middle of AA, and I get sponsees, and I start speaking on panels, and I'll do the coffee commitment, and I do this, and I'm active, and I get a new sponsor because that sponsor moved, and so I get a new sponsor, and what does new sponsor do? Say, oh, let's start at step one. Great, let's start at step one, and we start talking about my drinking, which was a long time ago, and so we're at step one, but by the time I get to step 9, and I've started cleaning up, my life starts getting better. I get a new job. The job likes me. And so it takes me another 5 years to slowly step back from AA. And I do this until I'm 19 years sober. But at 19 years sober, the stakes are higher now. Now I have a house that I'm losing. I have a husband that I don't like. I have, I don't like him. And we're actually really good friends. Thanks to AA. He's sober. And, but I don't like him. At that time, it's his fault. And I've lost most of my girlfriends. But I don't stop and go, I don't know what's going on. I'm in my life and I don't know what's going on. And I'm in meetings and I'm in the book and I know the book. I know it's so good. And now I've got 19 years, so I'm really impressed with my time. And so I'm now arrogant. I'm dying and arrogant. And I'm in meetings and I'm hearing chapter 5 and I'm really hearing it. And, there are those of you who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with yourselves. And I was like, what is that? Wait. There are those who lie to themselves. Okay, if you lie to yourself, how do you know that you lie to yourself? And I'm sitting in meetings going, why'd they write that? And I'm starting to go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs in the middle of meetings. And, and then I hear, some are sicker than others. And I'm like, do we tell the summer sickers that they're a summer sicker? Has anybody told them? Is there another meeting for the summer sickers. You know, we tell them behind their back. And I'm like, what if I'm a summer sicker? How do I know? And is there another book? And I'm in AA going nuts. And through a series of events, I run into these two girls at separate times who were total AA losers. One was a stripper at one time. She's dating a drug dealer. The other one was just wackatoo. And I hadn't seen them in a long time. And they're both being sponsored by this woman, Linda. And I can't stand Linda. And but they're doing great. And I don't like my current sponsor. And I'm going crazier doing all the work she has me doing. And I'm just out of my mind. And I do start thinking, maybe I need therapy. And there's nothing wrong with therapy. However, at that time, had I gone to therapy, I promise you, they would have sent me to a psychiatrist and they would have told me to get on drugs. I promise you. So I end up asking this woman, Linda, to sponsor me. The woman I don't like. Because I saw her change these girls' lives. These girls were different. They were totally different. One of them was sponsoring 14 people. I'm like, you're an AA loser. How are you sponsoring 14 people? You know, I'm like, who's your sponsor? Linda. Oh my God, not her. And, but I asked Linda to sponsor me, and I asked Linda, can you show me long-term sobriety happy? I knew I was not going to stay sober. I knew the scariest part of alcoholism is that one day it makes sense to drink. I knew that. So I had this knowledge that I knew enough to know I wasn't going to stay sober. Like this. I can't stay sober uncomfortable. Not like this. So I asked her, can you show me long-term sobriety happy? And she said, if you do what I tell you to do. And she was like an AA drill sergeant. She had requirements. She had so much. But when you're dying, hopefully you're willing. I was willing. And she asked me to call her every day. She asked me to, and get a new big book. We're going to go through the book. And I remember thinking, I know this book, not this book. My problem is not, my answers are not in this book. And, but I didn't say that. I just said, okay. And we got the book, and we started going through the book, and she said, we're not going to talk about your drinking. Drinking hasn't been a problem for you for a long time. She goes, the problem of the alcoholic centers in the mind. We're going to talk about your mind. Nobody had ever said that to me. And then she talked about this is a way of life. This is a way of living, way of life. And every time it said that in the book, she goes, see? Way of life, way of life. And she'd like point it out. She goes, does it say go to more meetings? Where does it say go to more meetings? Where does it say meeting makers make it? Where does it say 90 meetings in 90 days? She was like on fire. She's like, the answer's in this book. I was like, all right. And, and I started doing everything she told me to do. And the one thing that had been missing from my life was I'd been going steps 1 through 9. And by the time I cleaned up my current situation, I would pull away and start to make a mess. And it was like a hoarder, The crew would come in. The crew was steps 1 through 9. They cleaned my house. And then the minute the crew was gone, I started hoarding again. That's how I did my life. And so she's taught me steps 10 and 11. And she said, if you really want to learn this, Katya, you will teach it. You will teach it. And I grabbed newcomers, like I accosted them. I was like, come now, come with me on this, journey, because my life depends on it. And I literally, the minute I saw a newcomer, I would say hi and give them my number and all that. But then also the minute they weren't happy, I'm like, what's going on? And then they would tell me, I'm like, I know some magical writing and some column work. If you'd like to do that with me, I can help you. And, and overnight I was sponsoring 8 girls. It was like overnight. My marriage was falling apart. My money was falling apart. Everything was falling apart. I wasn't falling apart. And the marriage did fall apart. We did lose the house. I did have no money. Like, my whole outsides went to caca, and total caca. And I remember one day I called Linda, and I woke up. I was living in Woodland Hills. Okay, Woodland Hills is hot as hell. And I had a Mercedes, but it had no air conditioning. So I had a 12-year-old Mercedes. I was working at Nordstrom's folding sweaters on commission. I had just lost, this 6+ figure job, and here I am folding sweaters on commission. I'm using a credit card for groceries because Nordstrom's wasn't paying enough, and I'm on a twin bed, and it's lumpy, and my husband didn't want the dogs, so I have 3 dogs, 3 little dogs, and they're all on this lumpy bed with me, and I'm waking up in the morning crooked and, living the life, and 20 years sober, and I remember I woke up one morning and I felt happy, and I thought, oh God, I'm now going crazy. Because my outsides had always dictated my insides. And I called Linda and I said, am I going crazy? And I told her, I have no money. I went down the list, and she goes, oh honey, it sounds like you're having a spiritual experience. And I was like, what the hell? And from that time, from 19 until now, AA has been first. That is the one thing I learned from her. I learned 100 things from her, but that's the one main thing that never varies. AA has come first. And AA means, speaking, not speaking, sponsoring, talking to new people, going on panels. I spoke at a jail on Thursday. It was so inconvenient. It took an hour and a half to get there. I was so bitter driving there. Bitter, hour and a half. This is some baloney. And what am I going to tell them? And I never went to jail, and what are they going to want to hear? I was just in my head. And I was the first speaker for them. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, this is the eve of my birthday, my AA birthday. And I said to them, what a better place to be celebrating my birthday than with you guys. I said, thank you so much for being here. And I was like, I know you don't want to be here, but I'm happy you're here, and we had a lot of fun. And, and AA is very inconvenient. And AA it's a full-time, part-time job. It's a full-time, part-time job that sometimes is arduous. It doesn't pay you money, and it takes a lot of time. I work with people, and they're like, you're always doing something. I'm like, tell me about it. Like I'm in physical therapy right now because I hurt my back, and the physical therapist is like, well, at night when you get home, you can. I said, I'm going to this meeting, then I'm going to that meeting, then I'm going to, you know what I mean? But from 19 until now, I've had peace of mind. And no job, no money, no car can give me that. I've had complete peace of mind. Folding sweaters at Nordstrom, peace of mind. Money, no money, relationships, no relationships, peace of mind. And, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I am still on fire for AA. I really am. And it's given me a great life. And one last thing. So I used to get fired because when I'm not working a program, I don't instantly drink. What I start doing is I start stepping on the throats of others, and then they retaliate and go to the HR department. And so I had gotten fired from my very most favorite job because I was an HR liability at 17 years sober. And to this day, I've had 3 jobs ask me to come back. And I'm currently second round at my current job. I was there before, and I left on good terms. And so every time an old job asks me to come back, I'm like, oh my God, yes. So anyway, so thanks you guys. Thanks for listening.